Yes, everybody, us on the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well, my friends. We thought we'd come on and do a live. It's Thursday night. The weekend's almost here. We are on the road to the weekend, and we thought we'd come on because it's pre-season. Pre-season. It's back to school. And the kids are back. Not all kids. It's a bit like the squad's a little bit like when you get sort of the year sevens turn up for the first couple of days while the rest of them have a couple of days off. It's the non-international players are back. So the likes of Jared Bowen, Danny Ings, Zuma, Cress, these types of players. Obviously, the likes of Ben Johnson's still involved in the under-21s, really. And they're in the final, obviously, having beaten Israel 3-0 in the semis yesterday. And the likes of Souček and Aged and people like that. I don't think they come back until after the Australian trip. I think it's just after the Australian trip, I believe. Anyway, let's bring in Holes. She's just come back from picking up Dad from the station. Such is married life.
How's it going?
You're
going to laugh. The screen's been moved, so I haven't actually picked him up yet. So I'm going to have to dash off at some point. The joy never ends of Houston. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad. How are you? Obviously, you were on duty today with all the news and views, and it's been quite busy, isn't it? It's been quite busy.
A lot going on, just continuous news, and it's nice that it's not all about the Rice stuff because I was getting a bit sick of just chatting about that. I mean, most of the transfer stuff seems to revolve somehow back to it because we just need to get that done now. But there's so much going on. And it's really nice, like you were saying, see the players back and start thinking forward now to the new season. Slightly worrying that we don't have any new players, but it will come.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the club released a few pictures. We'll go through them because some of them are quite funny, I think. And I think that the biggest topic of conversation is Danny Ings having a hair transplant. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah, I mean, look, this is Danny Ings he's had a hair transplant, and so this is someone's put a picture of him actually in the hair clinic, so everyone thought he was sporting a new haircut. He's had a hair transplant. Good luck to him.
New season, new hair.
Yeah, exactly. New hair. We've got let's have a look. Who else we had? Let's have a look. Who we got Bowen with our new signing Pole. Just there talking to a Pole. We've got Moyes talking to his new first team coach. No one there. So yeah, obviously there's pictures of Kurt Zuma and things like that as well. Also, there was a few pictures of our Italian striker who's apparently reported back to training as well, which is good to see. Good to see conflicting reports about his future. Although I don't think they're very conflicting. I think the trouble is, the noise is coming out of the club is he's staying, but everyone in Roma wants him to go. But yeah, there he is with his wash bag. Yeah, it's like it was cold today.
Warm today.
It was quite a warm day. It's only about 15 minutes away from me, so it's quite warm.
It's like it's not in disguise.
Yeah, you don't know who I am. I haven't seen you for half a year. You don't know who I am. But obviously, I think one of the big talking point was Paul Nevin, the club releasing that he'd gone by mutual consent. Obviously, the belief is he's off to Strasbourg with Patrick Vieira. Strasbourg, who have just been bought by Todd at Chelsea because he hasn't got enough toys to play with. He thought he'd buy a League R side as well. I've done a little thought piece which is going out tomorrow about, I'm a little bit worried about all this now. Why is it? I don't know why, but every year since Moyes has been in charge, he's lost one of his coaches or one of his backroom staff every season, close season. It just gets me a little bit worried.
Likewise, I think there are a lot of rumours obviously coming out that he's not the easiest to work with and that maybe people aren't agreeing with tactics and that's causing a bit of conflict. I'd be so interested to know what's actually going on behind the scenes and whether it's more Steitzen kind of like if it's backroom recommendations that he's going to want to come in with instead, if there's some strategy to this, or if it's just people left, right, and centre deciding that this isn't for them anymore. What do you think?
Yeah, I think. Well, the thing is, I mean, I think there's two of those have left. So obviously, technically, three have left since Moyes has taken over, kind of, because obviously Alan Irvine was a massive one. Obviously, he was accredited as one of the main sort of the main sort of men behind the success, and that was a big one. But I thought particularly that you've got Paul Nevin. Obviously, Paul Nevin's been there throughout all of Moyes' tenure. And for him to go, I mean, it's only really Nolan left and the goalkeeper coach from the original. That picture that if from St Andrews, where they're all sat there, like the worst boy band in the world. And yeah, exactly. So he, so it is, I think, and also listen to, I think Roshane put up some tweets on Twitter and stuff saying how much of a blow it is, because he's one of Moyes' confidants. So at the end of the day, if it's for him furthering his career, I can get that totally. That's not, I don't see it as a problem. But is there anything more to it? I don't know. I think Stuart Pearce was always going to leave on it was always going to be a short-term thing. I think Alan Irvine was always wanting to go back to his family. So it's the Paul Neville one slightly out of left field a little bit. Warburton was always going to be a short-term appointment by all accounts. But because Devon was the guy who was the Mr. Earpiece. He was Mr. Obviously Mr. Nolan is Mr. iPad, but he was Mr. Earpiece. He was Mr. Training. He'd set all the training up, all that type of stuff. And it's just, I think we're gonna. I mean, but the flip side, I was seeing someone else on Twitter. I saw Frankie on Twitter from Wake Up West Ham, who was basically saying that good, because it's something needs to change, and if the main person in the dugout's not changing, then it needs to be freshened up underneath him, so to speak. And maybe it is. Maybe it's a Tim Steiner thing as well. Maybe, he wants to bring in his own coaches, and I don't know. There's so much.
I hope Tim Steiner will bring in his own coaches, because I think what worries me is the uncertainty of. I understand that obviously people aren't particularly happy with how it's working with Moyes, but I'm not sure bringing in people under him will solve that problem if he's still one of the ones or the person that gets the final call with that. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happens now, because, they're obviously going to have to get new people in. We need a bit of stability, really, don't we? Because we only sort of picked up a bit towards the end of last season when we sort of worked out how things were working for us. But every time it feels like a player or two start performing or Paqueta finds his form, there's another hurdle like this that just appears out of the blue. So there's no rest for West Ham fans, is there?
No, there's not. And I think it's and I mean that's what sort of the basic thread of my video is tomorrow is I'm worried that something, but my worry could be alleviated if something happens pretty sharpish. If it is the reports today of we put an official bid in that we've officially spoken about Derek Zakaria to Juventus. I don't know whether that's different from last week, but apparently we've officially spoken to him about getting him on loan. They want an obligation, we want to offer an option. So that's just semantics really. So you can't get an obligation unless you hit a certain criteria anyway. And
Barnes, that's apparently close
Barnes, now. I mean, I think that's again. I don't really. For me, it's like the whole Barnes thing again. I mean, we've spoken about it before. We joke and how many players we've been linked with, and there's no way we've put bids in for all 102 players we've been linked with. And so for me, I think sometimes a lot of paper talk happens, and people go, "Oh, Barnes is the one," and Barnes is someone I would be really interested in having. But apparently, according to Jacob Steinberg, he was someone one of many we were looking at, and it's not, I don't think he'll become. I mean, it's a shame because I'd like him. I don't think he'll become a West Ham player. He's not. What we've heard is not on the radar at the club. So, but the Derek Zakaria one will probably be joining very shortly on about 15 million quid, they reckon. So, I mean, it's just an
That would
official
help,
loan
though.
bid.
Just getting someone in.
That's what I mean. We just need someone in now. You did it at the Hammers headlines today. Another departure, no signings. We've got all this unrest internally. Apparently we know that Schumacher would prefer to go back to Italy, but West Ham don't want to sell him. Don't want to let him go on a loan. They only want to sell him, which is fair enough. And actually, but I think with someone like Antonio wants to, Antonio's always pushing for a move. And it just seems to be a one-way street at the moment. We just want to see a little bit come back the other way. And I think all it takes is a couple, and it just alleviates fans' worry, fans' anxiety. And I'm not assuming for once that Moisey and that lot are sitting there with their feet up on the desk and just like fingers in their ears. They're obviously they're not. Moyes has been in charge for over 1,000 games. He's not stupid at all. Yeah. But it just needs something, because Christ, like a month ago, we won our first trophy for 43 years, and it seems like the world's crashing around us, and we should be still like on a high, but we're not.
That's exactly it. It feels like since we actually won, there's sort of been one bit of bad news and then another and then another, and it feels like we've kind of gone backwards almost so far. But I don't think it will take us much to get back on track to the point where we feel like we're strengthening the side. Whether we lose players that aren't really working for us or not, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I just want us to get some players in the door, because like you were saying, at the moment it does feel like it's just departures left, right and centre. And hopefully now we've got Steitzen in, get Rice gone, then we have no excuse to not build. We've got the money and the strategy person. So if ever there was a time to then have absolutely no reason to not be making these signings, I think there it is.
Yeah, and obviously you did that really, really, really interesting thing last week about FFP and about the Rice, because a lot of people were like, why is it taking so long and things like that. But there was a clear reason why we needed to make sure we got the bulk of it within the space of a couple of years, because obviously because we're in Europe, and it's great being in Europe. It's the third time we've been in Europe, in sort of succession. The first time ever in history we've done that, but it comes with a penalty. It does, it's tougher FFP, and as you said, the 50 million sort of rolling debts within 3 years. Part of me worries that if we hadn't sold Declan Rice, would we have any money in the kitty anyway?
That worried me as well when I started doing the maths. I was like, hang on a second, what were we going to do if he was staying?
Yeah, and it just seems to me that it just seems a bit, winning the conference, we should have taken home 20 to 30 million pounds. We've guaranteed for next season another 20 to 30 million pounds for being in the Europa League group stages already. So you're thinking that should be going somewhere. Also, we would get extra revenue in terms of merchandise, selling all the bloody, stitching on the old shirts and charging 90 quid for it now, and all the extra. You're thinking, where's that money gone? I don't understand it. We should have been making a couple of signings already.
I think that's the thing. We now definitely have enough to invest with or without the Rice money, whether they're holding on to work out what the total sum is and therefore what our priorities are. And if we spend big on players or if we go for cheaper alternatives, perhaps that's it. But it is difficult to see when you do look at that. And I think it's also hard probably being the smaller ones in Europe, because you look at a lot of the teams that are regularly in sort of Conference League, Champions League, and they all have quite big commercial operations probably compared to us if you look at the sponsorships and things like that. So I wonder if there's more that could be done in the background in terms of bringing revenue in from less football streams and more kind of advertising as well.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's money. There's definitely money. I'm trying to do all the maths and it's there. There's enough to at least make a signing of 20, 30 mil, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, definitely. And you're thinking with signing, obviously we just did, we got the new shirt, which is apparently out in Saturday. We've got the new sleeve sponsors, JD Sports. And
everyone was like, can we see the sleeve that it goes on, please?
yeah, the sleeve sponsor. And then also we've signed a new deal with El Toro yesterday, I saw, for the men and women. So as you said, it's a commercial operation. But it just seems a little bit. And I think, and actually, some part of me still likes a spit and sawdust sort of approach to West Ham. It's but now we're sort of competing in a bigger, in a cleverer pot now, with the likes of Tim Steindon now starting. Part of me thinks a lot of that was a lot of the in sort of the inbounds were waiting until Tim came in potentially.
Yeah, it would make sense as well that if he's going to play a big part in the strategy, we want that person to come in and play a big part in who we do recruit. So I think that is the right order. It's obviously just scary when you see your targets being rumoured to go to other clubs and others showing interest. And you just we've seen the players that we want slip away from us so many times over the years that for once we feel like we're in a good position. We should have the money. If ever there was a time we were a more attractive club to come to want people to come to West Ham, it's now. So we're kind of like, let's go, let's hit the ground running.
Well, I think I know. For me, it's twofold. One being you've got whoever comes in as Declan Rice. He's not replacement, but comes into that position.
Yeah,
because there's a real opportunity there for someone to come in and make a huge difference there. So where before, if you're thinking we're buying another midfielder, and Deck was there, and Paqueta was there, and Souček was there, you're thinking, I'm coming in as a bit like Downs came in. He was sort of full fiddle to them three, really. So for me, it's like I know we've been linked to the likes of João Palhinha and Amadou Onana and obviously Dennis Zakaria and people like that. So one of them comes in, they've got there's a huge opportunity to become a really big player at West Ham in that role. And I think for a lot of players that would appeal to them. They've seen the role that how the fans have turned to have loved Declan Rice, and obviously we wish him all the well, the same as any other player who goes. But for me, it's like that's crucial. And what worries me is we've started pre-season and we haven't got anyone there. We've got a big Declan Rice shaped hole in our squad, and we know what's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen until probably the end of July, and they've only got a week and a bit before the season starts. We know it's going to happen, and we know.
And every year I hope it doesn't happen, and every year it happens, and I'm like, of course it happened. I knew it'd happen.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And James asked about Oggy. Obviously, Oggy he has just signed a new 1-year deal.
Yeah.
Part of me is I'm conflicted with him and Cresswell, because obviously one of the big issues, I've said it on a show before. Obviously, we've got the oldest squad in the Premier League. By prolonging the decision about Oggy and Cresswell till next season, now when they would leave at the end of next season. We're not going to be any younger, and
keep a record.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the trouble is as well is the thing is your manager is only he'll his contract runs out in the summer, so it's actually why wouldn't he keep his generals around? Because actually he's got particularly with the likes of Paul Nevin going, and he would have known about Nevin going a while ago. It's not like he's handed his 2-week notice in today. That would have been planned out for a long time. Same as Declan Rice, same as Warburton.
Yep.
So you can see why it's keeping, because obviously with Steinding comes in, and particularly maybe Rob, as you mentioned in your show the other day, Rob Newman going potentially as well. It seems to be crashing down around of him, to be honest.
It really does. It's it's worrying, because I think we just want to be building at the moment and not be sort of losing more and more of the overall team as it goes.
I'm not Schofield. Don't put me down as Schofield. There we go.
With Oggy and Cress as well, I'm also quite torn, because I'm glad that they're staying, and I think that if ever there was a time that we needed a bit of stability and a few of the players that know what it's like to be at West Ham, and they've been there in the bad times and they've now been there in the good times, I think it's important that we keep some players on like that. Obviously, when we lost Noble, we saw that changed kind of the kind of ethic that was behind things. And then losing Rice, if we are to lose Moyes at any point, we've lost a lot of the the team behind the scenes. Words aren't working today. I think it's really important to try and keep a few in, and they do a decent job for us when they're needed and when they're called upon. In an ideal world, we wouldn't be relying on players that were obviously right at the end of their career to come and save us, and we do want to be building and investing in the youth. But I don't think we can get that many signings in, because if you look around the pitch, we need so many different positions strengthening in an ideal world that we probably can't do it all at once, and it'd probably be silly to try and get them all in at once. So maybe those two centre back, and basically the defence, strengthen that up next window and go from there. But
yeah, I think you're right. I think it prolongs that discussion. If actually you're probably I mean that's the flip side is actually you've got two very good backup options there, and it saves you going out and buying a new left back. It saves you going and buying a new centre back, and as you said, concentrate that money in the areas where there are gaping holes, as you said, in terms of the midfield particularly and the forward line potentially as well. Obviously, we know that Roma are looking at getting Scamacca back, and they want a loan, but West Ham are basically held out to, as is reported quite a lot all over the place, that West Ham are looking at only a sale around 30-35 million to obviously match what they paid for him. So the chances are he'll be around, maybe against his own judgment, against his own wishes, potentially. I don't know, but I just think it's like there's too many question marks at the moment.
Yeah,
too many. I mean, even Declan Rice hasn't fucked off yet. Do you know what I mean?
It's like, can he just go? Can we
just,
where we are?
Just go that so we can stop that chapter and then move on. Even when because he's still technically getting paid by the club. He's picked up another month's wages. So it's just I'm getting really, really fidgety at the moment, and it's like it's really. Because obviously, myself, Holly, and Anton, obviously, we do all the rumours and stuff like that, and that's great. It's really interesting stuff. But you need to, I mean, as I said, last year, 130 players we were linked with. We bought 8, and arguably we bought 7 of them too late in the transfer window, and then we were up shit creek without a paddle before the World Cup. And we know that's going to happen again. And lessons haven't been learned, and that's what really frustrates me. Really frustrates me.
So I think as fans, obviously, of West Ham, for ages what's coming, and it's the transfer. And every year, it almost feels as though it takes us by surprise. I know that work goes on behind the scenes, and I know there's so much more to a signing than we see. I don't know if you saw, I can't remember which team it was now, but 2 teams thought they'd signed the same player the other day.
Brilliant.
I'll have to find it at some point, but they both announced it on Twitter, and then it came out that he'd literally basically strung one along and signed for the other. And the other one came out on Twitter and said something about hopefully they'll sign a defender that actually wants to be honest and be honest about when they've actually signed. So I know that a lot can happen and mistakes can happen and deals can change at the last second. But I just need us to get a deal over the line, just to get us that bit of confidence.
And as I said, I'm not even bothered about a deal. I just want, even if it's like Mark Warburton's replacement. Or something like that, just to show that there's some progress, something's happening. And actually, the appointment of Mark Warburton's, replacement could really show what the direction we're going in as a club now. Because if Moisey gets, I don't know, no disrespect, but if Moisey goes and gets someone like, I don't know, David Weir or one of his old mates, that to me shows business as usual. But if he goes and gets some random German, coach in the Bundesliga or something like that, you're thinking, okay, Tim's got all his fingers over this. And that's what I think us as fans want to see, some sort of new thinking around it, some sort of new approach to it. I mean, there was reports of we were looking at ex-players. We've done that already. We've done that already, and it's like I saw someone in the chat give Kevin Keane the job. No, because Kevin Keane's doing a very good job in the under-18s. Gary O'Neill, maybe, but but I don't know. He's been a manager at Bournemouth. We've had that with Mark Warburton. We brought a manager and he left after a year. We want to build something. These coaches build a rapport with these players, and Nevin, obviously. Vieira, going with Vieira to Strasbourg, obviously Vieira was manager at New York City, who's owned by Man City's owners own them. So maybe he's a roundabout way be back in the Premier League with Vieira when Pep leaves. At City, who knows? But I'm just there's just too much. There's too many balls in the air, and they're all going to fall down at the same time, and we know they're going to be falling down at the same time.
I want to see method in the madness, basically. I want to see which direction we're going in and what we're thinking. Even if it's bad.
Even if it's bad, at least there's some sort of direction. Even if it's like, right, Moisey gets in, even if he gets in David Will or whatever, or someone like that, or gives, I don't know, someone, one of his old mates a job or whatever. At least you know where the direction of the side's going. It's going to be back to Moyes' ball. Fair enough. Okay, we might not agree with it, but there's a direction. We seem a bit rudderless at the moment.
Yeah, we don't know direction. We don't know style of play. We don't know who's leaving. We don't know who's coming. And pre-season is upon us, so we need to.
And we play Bournemouth in 4 or 5 days' time.
Yeah,
and then they'll bugger off to Australia. On a tour which Moisey doesn't like going on tours out of the country. So why is that? So it's like, for God's sake, it's when you put all these things together, and then I forgot we've won a cup. Just forgot about that. Any truth in the Juve to Pablo? Pablo was on the list for Pogba's replacements, but to be honest, I reckon he's probably third or fourth. When you look at the list, there's Milenkovic-Savic, there's the guy from Lille, there's another guy, I can't remember who he is, and then there's probably Pablo. So he's on a list, but I don't think he'll go because you've got no money, basically. So if they get Milenkovic-Savic, it'll be on a free transfer anyway. The new director of football seems to have a good track record of finding players. If he's left alone to do a job, I won't worry too much. But with Sullivan and Diver and Dave in the mix, anything can happen. Right, okay, so apparently, and it's not apparently, in terms of the recruitment process, it's not Steiden's way or the highway. It's by committee. That's what we've been told by him, Nobes, Moisey, and at the moment Newman, although that might change. It might be 3 of them rather than 4 of them. And people are like, oh, he's just, do you know what? I don't think that's a bad idea. I'd rather get everyone's opinions and get everyone's thoughts and get players in who the manager wants, rather than just, what's that before, when certain chairmen have bought players for no, they just turn up.
Yeah, I like them.
A Sully special turns up. A Wellington Paulista turns up, and I don't think that's a bad idea. So I know, and I think the trouble is we look at everything now with black or white, and it's like, because he's not doing his own thing, therefore it's bad. Actually, it's not, because to be honest, he had a similar situation at Leverkusen, and he wasn't in full control. There was a manager and there was an MD as well. So, he was part of an organisation.
There's a team behind the strategy. It's not just one manager or one director of people bringing in players just saying, I want that one. But like you said, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think if there weren't frustrations already around Moyes and the style of play, people probably wouldn't be so frustrated or concerned about him obviously needing to have a say in it. But if it is to work with whichever manager you've got, your players have got to fit in a style that your manager is going to play. We've seen when we've tried to bring in strikers that don't fit with the style of play at all. So I think it's only a good thing that everyone has a say, as long as it's strategic rather than just sort of gut feelings of people fancying one player and going, yeah, we need them 100%.
Well, that's the thing now, is there's no real, because of the way Steindl does his coaching and does his analysis, picks players. It's not on hunches now, and I think the old-fashioned way is watch him a few times, watch him on telly, and make me go and see it. I mean, Moyes used to never buy a play he hasn't seen live, so that's different now. Now there is the analytics, there is the data, and it's not just the standard data. It's a lot more. I think we sort of alluded to. I think it was on an article we read about Leverkusen. They were looking to buy this software which counted how many times a midfielder looked up, stuff like that. So and that's the way you need to be. You can't be fingering your hair, just he'll do. And so the idea being is, with Tim, I think we're not going to get that situation anymore now. I mean, as Steve goes, obviously Alex Scott is another player we've been linked with, the Bristol City midfielder, good player.
Yeah, he's he wouldn't obviously be as expensive. He's young. I don't know if he'd fit straight into our squad, just because I think he's got a fair bit to improve on. But he was obviously the Championship Young Player of the Season, wasn't he? And he created a load of chances. He didn't have that many goal involvements. I think, hang on, I've got it here, 49 games, 2 goals, 5 assists. So obviously that's not that impressive. But I think he's got really good potential, and he probably cost somewhere around 20 million, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
So
2025, yeah. But also, he must have something. I've watched quite a bit of Championship, and he's a good player, and obviously,
yeah,
he did enough, despite the fact of his stats, to have got into, the team of the season, and it's a B young player of the season in the Championship. We've had a good run with Championship players, Bowen, Ben Rama particularly. Jordan Hugel, all of them, all the goods, all the greats. And so, I think he'd be good. The only thing with Scott is I think they call him the Guernsey Grealish. And so he is a bit like Jack Grealish in terms of you have to sort of let him find his way, let him play. So I don't know whether Moyes would do that. That was. But then saying that, he did do it with Lingard. So when Lingard played, he who shall not be named, he was given almost a free rein, wasn't he? He was sort of and so he has done it before.
It's possible.
It is possible.
I think they just need to do really well from the beginning of him giving that chance, because I feel like 2 games in, if you've not hit the ground running with that, that's it. You're kind of dead to Moyes.
That's the thing. I mean, look at Ben Rama. How he was in out. He was in the hokey cokey for a good season, and then was like, and even when we sort of assumed he was going to be dropped, Moyes kept picking him. He just made no sense. He'd drop him for missing like a couple of bad passes, but then when he was playing really really shit last season, Moyes kept him in the side. It made no sense at all. Mr. May said, maximum 5 games in the season. Moyes out. Will start again. Fans won't accept paying good money to watch the utter tedium. No way Moyes is still at Christmas. Well, I think, Mr. May, I think this is, to be perfectly frank, I think if he has a beginning to the season as he did last season, I think he's gone. I think, he's, I think being one of only 3 managers to have won something in the club, I think he sort of earned the beginning of the season. He earned that sort of. I mean, he was still under contract, so they weren't going to sack someone who had just brought silverware for the first time in 43 years. So for me, it was very much after he'd won that trophy, you thought, and the way he was not differing, but the way he was running about, and on the coach afterwards, in the open top buses, you thought he's not going anywhere. So I think he earned the right. But as you said, within the first 5 or 6 games, if it's not working, he's gone. He's gone, pretty sure.
It's make or break, and I think things might turn sour quite quickly as well, especially amongst fans, because if we have obviously invested into players that he agrees are a good fit, and then we've got the whole of pre-season with Moyes, if we were to go out and lose our first 3-4 games, I think it would be pretty awful and really disappointing, because we had so much to build on from the end of last season, winning the Conference League. It was kind of like, right, now let's level it up like we'd planned to the previous season. Now let's go and take this to the next level. So I don't think it would be a bad thing necessarily, though, if Stuyton has his own team or has recommendations or is playing a part in making sure we recruit players that are part of a bigger strategy, that whether Moyes was to stay or go, we'd hopefully still have a fully functioning team.
Yeah, I mean, that's a similar thing. I mean, I think a lot of clubs look at the way Brighton and Brentford operate and, look at Brighton. Brighton arguably became a better side when Potter left. When obviously De Zerbi came in. So I think that's the key. It's not football now is not that one man at the top, manager, and that manager rules the roost. It's sort of Brian Clough era, Sir Alex Ferguson. It's not like that anymore. They're in essence coaches. And if anything, it's run by the director of football. And as you said, it's about a system. It's about, Tim's got a lot to do. He's got to set this system up. He's got to set this recruitment system up. And it should be almost a production line. Brighton have left. Sol McAllister looks like it's going to sell Casado. They'll have the next ones lined up. Ivor Tony at Brentford's out for 8 months left, whatever he's on his ban. They've got the next one. They've got his replacement lined up. So that's how it needs to be done, and that's how those type of sides operate. Ian makes a point. We have been linked to to be honest, quite recently. A lot of South American players. There'll be 2 more we'll be linked with today, which I'll talk about tomorrow. Anyone remember Neymar Jr. 2016 wouldn't shell out? Well, I think it was 17 million. We actually put a bid in for Neymar, and actually we're doing a show, probably maybe this weekend, if not next weekend. Starting a new series called Retro Rumors, where we'll go through those things. So like Neymar, we'll talk about the Neymar, what could have been, and obviously there's loads of them. Gordon Banks, and just after the World Cup, we could have signed Gordon Banks, and we ended up selling Bobby Ferguson, and we could have signed Didier Drogba, but we ended up signing Josef Sofian, and all these types of things. But yes, South America is obviously, we've got the network set up there, and Brazil particularly. But we've seen, obviously we signed Luis Al, but he hasn't featured for the first team. He's stuck in the what's names, the under 21s.
It's hard sometimes as well, because someone can be a really good player, but then you'd bring them to a completely different league like the Premier League, and sometimes it doesn't play out. But then sometimes you look at things like that with Neymar Jr. and completely kick yourself for not managing to pull that one off.
Yeah, but it's like the one the other day. Was it Julian Alves, wasn't it? Where he was Rob Newen offered him to us, and he said no, and turned out to be a really good player. So but these things happen all the time. Big up to all in the chat. Hope you're all doing well. Thank you, Early Doors Football TV. Very good. Smash the like indeed. Smash the like for me and Holly, or just for Holly. She's been busy today. She's done 2 shows. Winning the trophy and making Europe 3 years in a row, finishing 6th and 7th, undermining the manager is counterproductive in my opinion. I get what you mean, Mark. I get what you mean. I think, Charlie. I think there's a definite spectrum of the fan base. There's some who are happy for it to happy to get success, so to speak, and get into Europe and finish. But some people they still want to be entertained, regardless. And some people want to be entertained if they're in the Championship and stuff like that. And I get that totally, because you pay a lot of money for your season ticket and you want to be entertained. You don't want to be bored. But there's a balance, isn't it? I mean, there's a balance between being successful and being consistent and being in the Premier League. If you're not in the Premier League, I know some people say, I'd watch us in League 2, but you would, but a lot of people wouldn't, and the club would probably go under, to be perfectly honest. And so I get totally what you mean, Mark. But I mean, I think it's a little bit. I think it's a bit counter. I'm always, as you said, I'm whoever's in the dugout gets my full support. If it was Avram Grant, he got my full support until he got sacked. If it was Sam Allardyce, he got my full support until he was moved along or left. And same with Moisey, really. Same as on the pitch. It was on the pitch. You might not agree. Thomas Suchek's picked, but he's wearing the West Ham Claret and Blue shirt, so gets my full support. And we just slag him off afterwards. But it's true.
I mean, as well, where I think if we weren't worried about the upcoming season because of the struggles we had last season, particularly in the Premier League, I don't think we'd be as worried about boring football. I think if we'd gone and won every single game last season, I'm not 100% sure we'd be that concerned about boring football rather than sort of the actual results. But obviously when we weren't really gathering any momentum, when we've got so many concerns around the squad, the players that we have, why some of them aren't performing, and we're not putting on those exciting performances, that's where it gets really worrying and stressful, isn't it? Because you've not got the entertainment nor the results. And at least you can kind of justify it on your head. If you're getting 3 points every single game, you can say, okay, it's not the most exciting football we're playing, but like Paqueta's looking better and that's making things more exciting and there's hope there. But yeah, I think we really need to hit the ground running next season, because if we can win the first 3 or 4 games, I'd like to think that mood will really change in the camp. Hopefully it will actually be a more exciting style of football as well, because the amount of times that we just gave the ball away last season on the pitch and struggled to hold possession, and our passing accuracy wasn't great at times. So if we can just fix simple errors like that, I think the excitement would also ramp up around that, because we'd be able to do more with the ball because we might have a bit more of it.
Yeah, no, it's very true. There is reports that his name was Steve Round. We could be. He did leave today. Actually, he did leave Arsenal by mutual consent at the same time as us. Coincidence? Possibly. Well, actually, no, tell a lie. I think he left. I think I think ours was about. I think Nevin was about 10:30. I think he was about 3:00 in the afternoon. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe he worked with Steve McLaren as assistant for the England squad as well. So, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe. Arsenal getting Santi Cazorla might be coming back to the club as assistant manager. There we go. Any of you hear about Moyes' bullying? Reason didn't renew. Wrote a comment on the Facebook page ago. Man who sits next to Ashby's dad. No, don't know about that. But I can imagine being a Scotsman. and being a fiery Scotsman, I'm sure that dressing room is a bit tasty at times.
Not too PG, I imagine.
Yeah, not too PG. Red State FFP doesn't relate to PL, but Europe. There's 2 degrees, isn't there? There's the Premier League have got rules and UEFA have got rules. So the video Holly made was about the UEFA rules.
And I believe the Premier League might be 100 million over 3 years. It's basically double that you can lose in the Premier League. And then, it goes down to you can be in a loss of 50 million over 3 years when you go into Europe. So just makes things a little bit more tricky, basically. I'd be really interested actually to look more into other clubs in Europe and how they manage to stay on top of FFP, just in terms of how much they have coming in to counteract the amount that they spend.
I don't think they spend as much. That's the thing. I think you don't tend to see. I mean, he says that, but then Real Madrid spent 100 million on Bellingham, but they don't do it. I think for particularly some of the German clubs, they spend, but they all seem to spend within the same league, same as Serie A. Serie A players just seem to move from club to club. They don't seem to move out of the league. That's why Schumacher was quite an unusual one. So obviously that'd be cheaper maybe as well. I don't know, but there must be some. They must just, because I think the way, and also it's the way incomes comes in. So with COVID, a huge proportion of, I think the Premier League is a third. I think it's roughly a third commercial, a third match day, a third broadcast, or something like that. So for some of the other ones where they have a higher percentage being match day, they would have always suffered a lot more in the older thingamajig. Yeah, no worries. Holly in a minute will go and pick up her husband. Does it feel weird calling it your husband?
It is. It's weird. It does take some getting used to, doesn't it? I just got used to calling my fiance, and then suddenly husband. Changed my last name. Everything's confusing. I don't know what's going on.
And in a few months' time, daddy and mummy.
I know, weird. I'm not going to be calling him that.
You know what? Yeah, but you do though. You do though. Like in front of the kids, like I was, mummy, do you want this? And then after, I just called you mummy. It's the first time I do it, but it does roll off the tongue. Honestly, it does happen. How long do you think Moyes has got? I think Moyes has probably got, I think the first 6 games, I reckon. Some fans will moan no matter what. It's the same for all teams. Totally. It is. I sat and had a few pints with 50-year-old season ticket holder from Fulham, and they did exactly the same thing. Mate, Scott, everyone moans. It's like, I'm sure when Spurs announced Ange Postecoglou came as a manager, I'm sure there was a whole heap of people going, who the fuck is he? And I'm gutted because I think he's a really good manager. But he's, there'll be Spurs fans who are moaning about them. Sure, there's Arsenal fans moaning about spending 100 million on Declan Rice because they don't know, you don't see him week in, week out. There'll be fans moaning about Man United. There'll be Man United fans moaning. There'll be definitely, Chelsea fans moaning because a lot of players are gone. They haven't really brought anyone in. So everyone does, mate. Everyone moans. That's why YouTube exists, really. Our league form has been poor for 18 months. That's long enough to turn it around and add the start to that, and fans get sick of it. I agree. I totally agree. Moyes has to change tactics or he'll be walking 10,000 miles. I don't think that's going to happen. Is Sully back from yachting? Yeah, he's back from his yacht. Yeah. I think it was last week he got back from his yachts. Him and his fiancée. Everything. That was brilliant, wasn't it? It's like so much thing in the midst of
negotiating the biggest deal ever.
the seventh biggest transfer in football, world football history. He's filming his missus with her boobs out. It's like,
how does this happen?
But then it's things like that which I actually I find really funny.
Yeah, same.
Some people, but I find it really funny. It's like when, you're thinking, just that. I remember like Antonio dressed up as the bloody snowman crashing his Lamborghini into.
I think that's one of my favourite things to ever happen.
And it's like, but that's just him. And it's like, he's our Premier League all-time goal scorer, and he probably will be probably forever or for a long time. Until someone scores that number of goals in the Premier League for us again. And it's like, well, that's just us. It's just us, And it's like this. But that's what I don't want to lose is that.
Yeah.
It's important to be really business-like, but actually we have a bit of a laugh anyway. We're sort of, if we wanted to be successful as fans, we backed the wrong horse, and so we have that sort of sadomasochistic view of being a football supporter, and I still quite enjoy it.
I want us to be like a big polished commercial organisation.
No,
you look at clubs like City, where it all seems quite smooth and calm. Like I feel like I'd struggle to get the excitement behind that, even if you're winning week in, week out. I quite like that we're a bit crap at times, and
that's what I quite liked about City when they won the treble. Is you see like someone like Grealish, who's not like your sort of whitest and white, good marketable. He's a bit of a lad, and he had a drink. He's still in his kit 3 days later, whatever. And I like, why not? You know what I mean? Why not? It's like football's become so sterile and boring.
Yeah,
there's a reason why when they put on ex-pro nights and things like that, people go and watch them because they're relatable. And speaking of relatable, that's a great segue, Russ. Speaking of not relatable, but speaking of, he's not very relatable because he's like Paddy Kennett. But speaking of good events, E13 are putting on a cracking night in next in September, 15th of September, at the Brentwood Centre. It's an evening with Paolo Di Canio. It's very rare you get a player night, ex-player night with Paolo. That's for sure. Hosted by Tony Cotti. I believe there may be some VIP meet and greet still available, but check E13 events, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Ian on Facebook, all that malarkey, and there's a link to it. I think it starts from 25 quid a ticket. Me on Anton, I bought him a ticket for his birthday. That's how nice I am. Exactly, bought him a ticket for him. Anyway, it's all good. Right, you better go. When you got to go, you better go.
I've got another 11 minutes unless you're in a rush.
No, I'm not in the rush. I'm not going. Just see the trainer picks of Skamaka. He doesn't happy. Skamaka never looks happy.
His face, isn't it? He's
never
just
looks happy. What do you expect? It's the middle. It's in the middle of July. He's turned up like he's gone to the bloody Antarctic expedition. Look at the state of him.
Inside, he's delighted though. You just can't tell.
Inside, he can't wait to be back.
The best time of his life.
He's like, this is not Roma. But it could be worse. You could you could be as you said at the beginning, you could be Jared Bowen with just laughing at a pole.
Could always be worse.
Obviously, being a father's gone to his head. He's got a bit doolally tat, and it's probably the only one he's spoken to. He's not Mr. Tumble or one of the or in one of the night gardens or whatever like that. Or you could talk to Moise, who's talking to no one, just talking to himself like a crazy man in the corner. Or as I said, we could have Danny Ings with his new hair. So we're looking forward to see. It takes a while. Do you know? It's because I was thinking the end of the season. I mean, it would have been July. So when you get a hair transplant, 'cause my friend's had one, it takes a good 4 to 6 weeks before he can't be doing any heading when he's not that.
Yeah, you can't touch your head on anything, can you?
No, you can't touch your head. You can't do. You can't. You have to sleep sitting up for the first 2 weeks. You can barely shower. You can't shower your head. So you have to wash it with a flannel.
It's slightly problematic.
Very problematic.
Footballer.
Very problematic. What have we got here? All right, guys. Never mind me. Oh, what did I miss? Nothing. We're just having a good old chinwag. Mate. Have you seen the Noble of Rice playing with? Yeah, in Noble's Garden. Nice free kick. Not a full-size goal though. I'm quite disappointed by that. Not to be mean, but we need to get rid of Souček and keep Downs.
Ooh, what are you saying, Russ?
I think we need to get rid of both of them.
Yeah, I think
I'll be honest, and it's horrible. It's like, but actually, for someone like Downs deserves to be playing first team football regularly. He is not going to, particularly with David Moyes in charge. He's not going to get in front of Paqueta. He's not going to get in front of Souček, and he's not going to get in front of whoever we bring in. Whether it's a Onana or a Zakaria or Alex Scott, you've paid 25 million, 40 million, 50 million, whatever. You're not going to get ahead of him. And so, I mean, he'll play lots of the Europa League games. No problem with that. He'll play the cup games. No problem with that. But if it means we can maybe look at, I mean, I don't really want Sean JWP, but if it means we can get him cheaper and Downs can go to Southend, he'll have a cracking time at Southampton because
Okay.
Have a good time at Southend. Go on the pier, Peter Pan's playground. You've got the Kiss Pavilion. Great times had by all. Rossi's ice cream parlour. But for Downs, it's like he needs to. I mean, people sort of think of him like he's a youngster. He's a week younger than Declan Rice.
Yeah.
And and there comes a point where you need to be playing first team football, and I think he would have a great time at Southampton. Russell Martin, the manager there, was his manager at Swansea. We had a really good time. So Souček, I think if the money comes in, again, we've got issues with Souček in terms of contracts. He's still got 2 years left in his contract. So next year he'll be going to the final year. Bowen's the same as well. So if it means that a deal comes in, not for Bowen, but if a deal came in for Souček, I'd probably sell him because Souček he wants what he wants. West Ham aren't going to give him. I don't think it's so much of an issue with Bowen because, not being funny, when your father-in-law's Danny Dyer, you're not going to exactly. You're not Christmas around the Dyer household is not going to be good if he goes to Tottenham or someone like that.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine? So I think we've still got. I mean, I imagine Bowen wants to stay, so that'd be much a problem. But with Souček, definitely, I think it's if I could get money from him, I'll let him go. No problem at all.
Yeah, no, I think he's not good enough for where I want the team to go. He's doing a good enough job until he's replaced, but I think we need to upgrade on Souček, and I think Downs is a decent backup to whoever the two defensive midfielders are. I'm very comfortable with him, like you said, in cup games and things like that as the backup, but I don't think he's going to get first team football over the two defensive midfielders.
Same as Fornals. And it comes to a point where, unfortunately, you get a situation now where you get football and then you get sort of the sentimental side of football and the business side of football. Yeah. And actually, if it wouldn't happen, but if Juventus came in for 15, 18 million pounds, 20 million pounds for Fornals, you'd probably have to consider it because actually he's 27. There's no more sell-on value for him. His value is going to decrease, and if it meant you could reinvest that and bring in a younger player who you've got another 5 years invested in, who maybe you could sell for twice the profit 5 years later, that's the way football goes. And it's horrible to think of it like that. It's the whole thing with like Declan Rice. I mean, to be honest, we made a rod for our own backs. We offered him a stupid contract, 8-year contract. We didn't go back and offer him the contract he wanted. We didn't really do what we wanted to do and what he wanted to do and play the team around him. He may not have never gone, but 18 months ago, he made a decision and there's nothing he can do about it. It cost him 10 million quid, but he always wanted to know when he was going. So that was it. Same with Lanzini. Lanzini was an easy one. That's why we talk about the Bonner thing and Cresswell thing, and maybe in hindsight, they're good deals. Whereas Lanzini, we've got enough cover in that position, and with a younger player as well.
It's hard when you get a soft spot for players like Lanzini and Fornals, ones that love the club and want to work hard. But it's almost nicer to let them go if you're not going to use them, rather than just keeping them on your bench or not even on the bench at times. It's better to go and let them play football and reinvest that money elsewhere, rather than just sort of keeping them sitting there with no plans to use them. As hard as it is to say goodbye.
It is. It's a strange one. I mean, we have old Dan Fandango. When he comes on, he always says, the fun thing he always used to say is, don't fall in love with a lone player. We all fell in love with Lingard. And the next one is, don't fall in love with any players. And actually, I think nowadays that's more true than ever. You don't get, and I've had this debate on, I did like a TikTok live the other day, and people were talking about Rice being a legend. And I know this conversation has been going on for the last couple of weeks about, can he be seen as a legend and stuff like that. And I don't think he can. And I think it's not a case of, I think it's a case of modern football. You don't get players hanging around like Nose for 18 years anymore now. Remember when we interviewed Tony Gale? I think Tony Gale was at the club for 11 years. I think every year bar one was a testimonial year for some player. And so you don't get that situation anymore now. So I think you don't really get legends of the game anymore now. You get cult heroes, fans' favourites, players that were revered by the fan base, but you don't get legends anymore, and that was very evident. People saying he was a legend, and I said, Well, I put this 4-point plan together, and it worked quite well. When people were sort of saying, "What about this player?" and I go, "Well, not a legend, cult hero. Move on." You know, it was quite simple, and it worked quite successfully.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's difficult with players, particularly because Declan Rice. I think because when it's academy players, I think back to when we sold Grady Dean Garner, and it was like the world had fallen, and it just imploded, and we'd sold it to West Brom for 19 million. When Noble had to go to Twitter and say we didn't want to sell him, and it turns out that actually he was pretty shit.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't have done too well for us anyway. I think a legend as well is someone that's got to have done amazing things and had your heart, but for a really long period of time. And like you said, I think that's going to happen less and less in football because people now move.
Yeah, my 4-point plan is one, they have to have won something.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's really important. I think the second one is they have to play at least 300 games, if not 350 games to the club, because that will put you into the top 20 or 30 of all time. I don't think you could be a legend if you play 12 games. I don't think Carlos Tevez is a legend. Thirdly, you've had to win Hammer of the Year. I made a point, maybe multiple times, maybe not. So you have to at least win Hammer of the Year, because that to me is the one accolade that the fans can decide on. And fourthly, you have to have a connection with the fan base, maybe even a song. So I think if you've got all of them, you're a legend. So you look at Billy Bonds, 799 appearances, tick. He won, what's the name, 1980? Yep, tick. No problem. Hammer of the Year, multiple times, tick. Billy, 6'2", Billy Bonds, he's got a stand named after him, tick. Legend. Trevor Brooking, all the same, tick, 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 tick. When you look at someone like Di Canio, actually, I'll probably say Di Canio because we're trying to do it with promoting a night for him. Let's think someone else. Let me pick, I don't know, okay, let's pick Antonio, because people have mentioned this in passing. Pick Antonio. He's played over 200 games. Yeah, all right. He's won Hammer of the Year. Yep. He's won something. Yep. But does he have the love of the fan base? No.
That's the missing puzzle piece. 100%. I agree with you. You need all four of those things.
That's it. And I think, and I think if you don't have them, then you're a cult hero. So I think someone like Nobes. Now, to me, technically, he's not a legend because he ain't won nothing. He ain't won nothing.
Yeah,
he's a cult hero, and I wouldn't put, but for some people, he is a legend. That's fair. But in my opinion, he ain't. So Ginger
Pele Dawson, exactly. Run for a brick wall for you.
Exactly. So both of them, exactly. They've got the fans. They didn't win the what's name though. Won a Hammer of the Year. But yeah, I know what you mean. Di Canio is a legend, and his love was real, not fake like most. All good PR, indeed, Troj. But didn't win anything, and he only played 100 and something games for West Ham. So technically, Antonio played twice as many games and scored 50% more goals. There we go. That's why I always just throw it in. Yeah, that's why I always throw it in. Right, go. Holly's got to go.
Right, I'm heading off. Have a good night, everyone.
No, just go. She's gone. She's smashed me. I've got to go now. Just go. Nobes has won the Betway Cups as Ludders. Doesn't unfortunately count. Doesn't count. But I mean, you could, you look at someone like Alvin Martin. Tick, 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 tick. Legend. You look at someone like Frank Lampard Senior. All, and again, that's something which when I was looking at all of this, as I was doing the analysis, I'm thinking, actually, why isn't Frank Lampard? Is it because of his son that he's not? In some people's eyes, he's not. He should be in the same level as the likes of Bonds, Brooking, and Morrow, but he's not, and he should be. But anyway, that's my rant over about legend status. Carlos Borgia is a player we should sign for Man City. Definitely, Vicky, good player. Torres, a new one in the under-18s. Scott, he did, but he thought, he thought he was going to go to Roma at that time. So I mean, he probably wants to go home. He probably does. But the club has said no. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's and it's the same thing with the Paqueta thing. Fair play. He goes, we're not going to sell him, but if you want to buy him, it's going to cost you this. That's good business. We always have a team of highs and lows. Hartson, Berkowitz, and the youth coming through the Ashton, banging in goals and getting crippled by England and getting crippled. Yeah, totally right. You're totally right. Do you think any of the under 21s will step up? I think you'll see. I think you're sort of all going to know the two that are going to be coming through in terms of Freddie Potts and Divine and Barmer. They're going to be the two which you'll see a lot more of next season. I'm pretty sure for that. Just because they've been in and around. Obviously, they were on the bench for the conference game as well, weren't they? For the final. And I think you'll see them. I think others, obviously, we signed Sean Moore from Cliftonville. He'll go into the 18s or the 21s. You'll see some of the 18s move into the 21s more regularly. And then we've got quite a good bunch of 16s as well. So they'll be coming in. So the future's bright. It's just, and that's why I quite like the way that hopefully the new sort of management setup will be in terms of Steinden overseeing it all, and then Noble maybe I can see him having more of a academy view. Maybe not academy director because that's Kenny Brown, but sort of that sort of sporting director in charge of the academy development or academy development sporting director or something like that, because that's what I think he would thrive at, to be honest. What we got here? Any news on Kira going, or is it just? I think it's just a rumor. Longevity is a big thing for me too, but unfortunately, you don't get it. You don't get it anymore now, do you? You don't get it. Frank Senior 75 and 80. He was indeed, and also, not many. There's only three. Him, Brooking, and Bonds. All the across the both. That's it. Not many people on too. When is Patsy Holland back in? Well, we'll get Patsy back on in the cut, maybe in the new year. In the new year, not in the new season, we'll get Patsy back on. You can go and check the channel out. He's been on there a couple of times. Patsy's a one lovely man. Lovely man. I used to live a couple of doors down from Frank in Gideon Park, very close to me, Trudge. Very close to me. I live in that area as well. I do indeed. So what we got coming up? Well, tomorrow I've done a bit of a thought piece about why I'm worried. For the season ahead. And then for Hammer's headlines, we'll be doing Dix is a legend. Yep. A legend, no, or cult hero. That's the thing. And I'm not getting into semantics because there's no wrong or right answer. I haven't always lived. Alvin still lives in the area, mate. Alvin still lives around here. So yeah, and then Hammer's headlines. We've got some more rumours as per usual. I think we've broken. I think it's 2 or 3 new names. So we'd have broken the. I think we were on 102, so I think we'll be at 105 or so, which is crazy. And then the weekend, tomorrow we might have Irish Tommy tomorrow night as well, doing his late show. So we'll see if he's not driving from Tip. He's always driving to Tipperary. It's a long way to go, apparently, if you listen to the song. And then we'll try and do something a bit different on the weekend. So on Saturday or Sunday, we've got we put together a video list of the 15 worst transfers of all time at West Ham. And let me tell you, for one, it's hard to have kept it down to 15. It's hard. I do an honourable mentions, and the honourable mentions bit is probably as long as the 15, in all honesty. But some of them are brilliant. Some of them are great. Good fun. Particularly with the Declan Rice money going through, buying the right players. So yeah, I won't give away who's the winner, but it's the 15. And you think, God, we've had some shit. And even honourable mentions. As I said, I think I go through about about 24 other signings at least, and it's just, and they could have been 50. I could have done the top 50. Maybe I should have done the top 50 of all time, but we only did 15 because otherwise you'd have been here all night. It'll be interesting first coming weeks. First pre-season is on Monday. Obviously the players are back today, so we'll see what happens there. We've been led to believe that we're having talks with Zakaria, but we'll see. I just don't know. Anymore now. I don't know. We'll just go through it and see what happens. As I said, there seems extra interest from Southampton for Downs is coming back out again. So anyway, don't want to be happy. Roberto wins hands down. We'll see. Well, that's the trouble. He put his hands down. That's why he was so shit. Benny McCarthy might get a mention. Roberto might get a mention. Did I? Or the one that did a runner and didn't join us under Harry? Jerry Beecham may well be in there. He didn't do a runner, but he may well be in there. He was beyond juices. Caldwell could have done better. Is Bournemouth going to be all the youngsters? Probably all the youngsters, and also probably maybe a few of the first teamers. Maybe we don't know. Could make one hell of a crap team. Roberto and Go, indeed. Are the Sullivan lads involved with the club? Not really now. I think they're both technically directors, but they're not. Jack's not isn't involved in the kids in the women anymore. I don't think so. I don't think they have. I think it's more as a face. Do you know what I mean? But I think they're there as with their dad basically. Yeah, no, it's yeah. And actually, I was thinking about Steve. I was just randomly, when your mind drifts away. We were just talking when we started to talk about Paul Nevin, and actually with Steve Round potentially, obviously have left Arsenal. Someone did message me just now that he was assistant manager at Everton and Man United under Moyes, so very much an ally. So, so despite what we were saying about about Tim coming in, I think if he comes in, it's pretty much going to be sort of another like for like in terms of. I mean, Billy McKinley is one of Moyes' men as well. And then I've just read an article from Jacob Steinberg, and West Ham have currently not made a final decision on their transfer targets for the summer. So that's going to be interesting. Oh, I am getting worried. Oh, dear. Anyway, I'm going to go before I depress myself even more. As I said, we'll have a bit of fun over the weekend. How many will passes? No idea at all. But we'll see. It is what it is. We know it's going to happen. But we'll roll with the punches. As I said, if you're new around here, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, give it a good subscribe, give it a like to cheer me up. As I said, I'll be back tomorrow morning with me worried rant, and then Mohammed's headlines, and then we've got the weekend. I imagine maybe the Rice deal might be. Obviously, the kit's being released on Saturday. Apparently, that's something to look forward to, isn't it? The kit. So we'll see. Boogers is a legend. He may well appear in the 15th. And to think Martin stepped in and shut down a top side, and Roberto couldn't stop a beach ball. As I said, not as I said when I wrote my the script for the show. There's not many transfers that cause a manager to be sacked, and that one was the decision to let Adrian go to Liverpool. Well, let Adrian go, who then signed for Liverpool and played in the Champions League, and then bring in Nigel Martin, David Martin, and Roberto caused Manuel Pellegrini to lose his job. Anyway, good night. Thank you very much. Are the pics of Rice in the shirt or photoshopped? That is, he hasn't had his medical yet. Anyway, thank you very much. We'll do tomorrow, maybe, or the next live, we'll do the draw for the June members draw. If you're a member, you hit join down there. It's very, very easy now. But you get entered into a monthly draw. This month, we've got a signed West Ham shirt signed by the Europa Conference League champion winners. And we'll also be doing a signed football midway through the month as well. But the only way you can get involved is by becoming a member and hitting the join button down there. It's one tier, $2.99 a month, and you support the channel in that way. So thank you very, very much. And we'll see you guys very, very soon. Good night, my friends. Farewell. Adieu.